Welcome to the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. How many credit cards do you have? How much debt do you carry on each one of those credit cards? I have 3 or 4 in my wallet as we speak. I have probably 2 or 3 in a drawer that I don't use. I don't have any debt on any of them. They're there for me. Emergency. I would get rid of the ones I don't use, except that having those helps your credit score. Which sounds dumb, but you play their game. Did you know it's basically immoral to owe more than you can repay? You say, well, yeah, well, I can pay it off over. Well, that's if you don't get sick, if you don't lose your job. What this situation says is, I can't pay for everything I want, so I'll let you pay for it while I do something else. When an individual does this, we consider that a shame. When a family does it, it's destructive. When a nation does it, well, that's just business. The U.S. debt stands at around $22.5 trillion. That's 22,500 with 9 zeros after it. 22,500 and 9 zeros. And it represents 6% more than we take in as a nation each year. We are on the wrong side of this story. This is like the family with an annual income of $100,000 having a credit card debt totaling $106,000. At 6% interest, that amounts to just under an additional $6,400 a year. So if you were paying, say, $10,000 a year on the loan, you'd really only be paying $4,000. And no one remembers a day when we didn't spend more than we take in. Did you know it's immoral to carry that kind of debt? Unsecured debt? You can buy a car, you can always sell it. You can buy a house, you can always sell it. But you can't sell your dress, you can't sell your shoes, you can't sell your suit. The Bible teaches us not to have any debt. Now, debt is characterized in the Bible as sin. But only if you borrow which you cannot repay. It's not wrong to have debt. It's wrong to have debt you can't repay. If you're a Christian, Romans 13 verse 7 teaches you that Christians pay what is owed. Psalm 37:21 says it's the wicked who borrow and they don't pay back. When you borrow, make sure you can pay it back. Ecclesiastes 5:4. It's better not to make a vow than to make one you can't fulfill. There'll be a day when our debt will become due, payable. What will you do then? However, there's a serious hesitation among the political class to A, do it, and a great debate as to B, how to do it. Our progressive lawmakers have largely refrained from discussing this liability, preferring to claim that the United States can continue to fund exorbitant government programs. Conservatives have unsuccessfully, on numerous occasions, attempted to limit federal outlays. With each failed attempt, however, conservatives continued to vote for spending increases. As Michael Tanner of the National Review writes, quote, "There is no effort to prioritize or make the difficult choices of governing. There is only more." Each attempt to cut or reduce the growth of federal spending has been met with resistance and ferocious outrage. In fact, federal spending has subsidized numerous programs which have grown dependent upon the federal government. For now, lawmakers continue to spend as if they're children in a candy store with no limit on their parents' credit card. And the reality is that at some point, lawmakers are going to have to address the underlying problem. It's federal spending. In our system, lawmakers are representatives for their constituents. That's you and me. Now, while that goes without saying, lawmakers are unlikely to address the ever-increasing national debt until their voters demand action on it. What remains unfathomable to many voters is how much money $22.5 trillion really is. As John Miltimore has written, the problem is that the human mind has trouble understanding a figure so huge. So here are some facts that help you put into perspective just how large a sum $22.5 trillion is. For example, in order to pay down our national debt, we would have to combine the GDP of China, Japan, and India. To understand it, the United States owes $68,400 for every citizen. The United States owes $183,000 for every taxpayer. The United States currently has $125 trillion in unfunded liabilities. We're just having this stuff. It's got no money behind it, but when the bill comes due, well, we just pay it. According to the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, the U.S. debt held by the public will reach 100% of GDP in 7 years. In 2008, interest on the federal debt was $253 billion. Interest for fiscal year 2019 is roughly 89% higher than that. For fiscal year 2019, interest on the federal debt is $479 billion. Now, to put that in perspective, in 1979, total federal government receipts were only $463 billion. In the year 2000, the federal debt was $5.67 trillion. In 2019, it's 297% higher. At Forbes, Jim Powell writes that the old New Deal cost about $50 billion from 1933 to 1940. 7 years. Whereas the future cost of old New Deal programs still in effect is reckoned at more than $50 trillion, more than twice than what it is today. A recent analysis by the CBO projected that the federal budget deficit, and the deficit is always the difference between outlay and income, will increase to $1 trillion just in 2020. This year. As of December 2018, only 10 countries had a worse debt to GDP ratio than does the United States. At NPR, Danielle Kutzenblend writes that Senator Bernie Sanders' taxation and spending plans would together add $18 trillion to the national debt over the next 10 years. According to the Center on Budget Policy Priorities, roughly 24% of federal spending goes to Social Security, something no government is responsible to supply. Social Security. That is a pure, I just love you and I'm going to do it. I don't have to. 26% to federal health insurance programs, something no government is responsible to supply. 9% to safety net programs, which they are responsible to supply, and only 2% on transportation infrastructure. You get out on the highway tomorrow and you say, man, the traffic is crazy. 9% for safety net, 2% for transportation. Then you can move to Charleston, South Carolina. You have never seen anything like that. Something is out of control. By 2025, the cost servicing of our national debt will exceed the cost of our military spending. The cost of implementing a universal basic income, presidential candidate Andrew Yang's Central Social Program proposal, would cost $3.8 trillion a year, or roughly 85% of our current federal spending. He wants to almost double what we're spending now. It would take the United States 713,470 years to pay down the national debt if we started paying it at a rate of $1 per second. Modern presidents have doubled the national debt every 9 years. The Federal Reserve purchased large amounts of federal debt as part of its quantitative easing program this past year, thus cheapening the cost, meaning decreasing the interest rates of the money. Lawmakers and political pundits continue to insist that federal revenues are the real issue, despite continuous growth in federal revenues. Heated rhetoric over federal tax cuts ignores the reality that federal spending increases continue to outpace federal revenue increases. At some point, purchasers of U.S. Treasury securities may request a higher return, materializing in higher interest rates, unless lawmakers address our growing national debt. What can we do about all this? Well, we can demand that lawmakers implement responsible policies that protect our nation's financial security. But the question is, will we? Not likely. You see, we vote for people we like. And we like those who promise to spend more money to help us take care of things we are responsible for, like health insurance and pensions. That's how immoral we are as a nation. And we think about it differently. We don't think about it as us being immoral. It's them. But we vote for it. We vote for the guy, the gal now, who's going to give us the best bang for our buck. If somebody came along and said, you know what, we're going to shut down all these non-essential programs, we're going to wrap them up and put them away, and we're going to get this budget under control, there would be such an outpour. The streets of Washington, D.C. would be clogged with people for days, months, years protesting. We would hear sob stories like you wouldn't believe. Why? Well, because we're selfish. Because we won't do what we need to do to take care of ourselves. We want somebody else to do that. Mommy did it. Why won't the government do it? We need to look in the mirror. This is ungodly.